Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition.
It's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family,
regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. And may God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love.
God love you and God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. And may God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me
sister, God love you, God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Oh, oh. Bring me a higher love. Yes, it's that higher love I've been thinking of. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Oh, oh. Bring me a higher love. It's that higher love I've been thinking of. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Hey, good morning, Crosspointe. As always, I'm really glad that we can gather together this morning. Hey, I wanted to share a couple things with you before we dive into the new teaching series today. One is that if you're a parent of a kid 5th grade or under, I just want to encourage you to take a moment and make sure that you're following our Kids Point social media pages. So you can jump on your phone now if you want to, jump on your laptop now. That'd be a great way to just jump on and follow it if you're not following it already. And not only is it a good way to stay connected, not only do our teams provide lots of really great info and content for parents, but you especially want to make sure that you're following at least one of their accounts today, because tomorrow on Monday the 14th, they're going to be doing a giveaway for parents. And it's just worth your time for a follow because, right, everybody likes free stuff. So hopefully it'll be a tangible bit of encouragement to you in your day. And so definitely make sure you jump on and make sure you're following one of their social media feeds before tomorrow. Also, just wanted to let you know that we, as Crosspointe, we're continuing to partner with Family Promise this week again. Family Promise is an organization that serves homeless families and keeps those families together rather than splitting them up among different shelters, and helps them get back on their feet. And so in past years, we've typically hosted families on our campus, but that's not possible right now during the pandemic. And so Family Promise, thankfully, has secured temporary apartments for families to stay in. And so we're going to be providing meals all week to these families. And this week we have 6 families that we're going to be taking care of. That includes 11 kids aged 12 and under. 3 of those are infants, and so they've definitely got a lot going on there. But different Crosspointe people are partnering together to provide meals all week to these families. And so I just want to let you know that we've still found ways to love and serve the homeless in our city and haven't slowed down in that way. And then also, I just wanted to share with you, just again, as a reminder that together as a church, we've been able to help now 20 families just the past few weeks with rent, utilities, and medical bills. And so I want to just, as an example, I want to share with you one person's story that they wrote us just this past week. They write this. They say, "It's me and my daughter living together. She's 10 and in the 5th grade. I lost my job due to COVID-19 on March 5th, 2020, and since then I've lost my car and had to pawn a couple of items that meant a lot to me and my family. I'm in unemployment, but I only pull in $66 a week, which disqualifies me from a lot of the extra benefits that the majority of Americans are receiving. I'm in desperate need of financial assistance for my rent. I've been applying to jobs, but of course no one's hiring due to the pandemic. I'm blessed enough to receive EBT for my daughter and keep her fed. I really want to keep a roof over her head as well. We just beat homelessness 5 months ago, and it would kill me to put her through this again. Please, if you can find it in your heart to bless me and my child with anything, we would be truly grateful." And so I'm really glad that we were in a position, because of your generosity, to help her keep going, and she was beyond grateful. There's another single mom that received an eviction notice this week from her landlord, and she couldn't pull all the money together to keep her and her kids from getting evicted. And so she reached out to us. She heard that we were an organization and a group of people that might be able to help, and together we were able to fill that gap for them. And again, she was just overwhelmed with gratitude for all of you. And so Crosspointe, just again, thank you for contributing to all the things we're doing as a church day in and day out together to love shockingly well. And just so you know, we have teams of people and leaders that go through a really good process with anyone who ever asks for help, especially financial assistance. And we only write checks to landlords or utility companies or medical facilities. We don't write checks to individuals. And we work really hard to be a really good steward of every single dollar that's entrusted to this organization and community. But I want to keep sharing stories like that with you so we can be reminded that we really can do a lot more good and love a lot more people by leveraging our generosity together. And as someone who contributes to Crosspointe financially myself, I know I wouldn't have been able to meet the immediate financial crisis needs of 20 different families on my own, but I know that when I contribute to what we're all doing together here, it makes that possible. And it makes a lot more than that possible. And so just know I'm really honored to be a part of this church community with you. So to continue to be a part of making stories like that happen, as always, you can go to crosspointe.org/contribute. Lots of different ways you can contribute there, or you can text the word crosspointenc to the number 77977. It'll send you a link on your phone, and then you can contribute however you want to there. Crosspointe, I just want to remind you that I love you people. I love who we are, and I love what we're doing together. So thanks for continuing to live out really good stories.
I saw this quote a while back, and there was something about it that made me laugh. I actually jotted it down and thought that would make a good t-shirt someday. This was the quote. "Times are bad. Children no longer obey their parents, and everyone is writing books." A little bit after that, I saw this. This isn't a quote. These are stats, and they didn't make me laugh, but they did surprise me, and in the strangest way, they gave me a broader perspective. The violent crime rate has increased by 126% in a decade. And Americans' chances of being murdered has doubled in 10 years. There have been over 300 riots. I was amazed by that. See, the first quote that made me laugh, the reason that made me laugh is because that was Cicero, a Roman writer, an ancient Roman writer and lecturer who said that about 6 decades before Jesus was born. So 2,000 years ago, there were still men saying, kids these days, everybody has to be creating social media content. What's the world coming to? Millennia ago. The other thing, the stats, that didn't make me laugh, but did reset my mind in a significant way. They aren't recent stats. They're stats about the U.S. from the mid-'60s and '70s. A very tumultuous time on a lot of fronts, but as difficult as it is to look at that, it doesn't even capture the rampant terrorism and notable assassinations and the fact that war was on everybody's mind in that moment. It was remarkable because that was then, and we got all the way through that. In a lot of respects, we got all the way through that moment and to another moment. And so we're going to start a new series today. We're going to start something new, but in a lot of ways, we're not going to start anything new at all, and that's sort of the point. We're going to try to awaken and remember what fear makes us forget. We're going to try in this series to talk about how we've been taught a lot of things, but we haven't learned a lot of things. So the name of the series is Yesterday, Today, and Forever. And that's going to be a way of talking about our lives and our faith in a way that's really, really simple and yet really easy to forget. And I'm going to give a particular angle on that in this introductory message to the series. And I'm, as always, hoping to start a good conversation, not have the last word on it at all. Yesterday, Today, and Forever. This is the way that the author of the book of Hebrews refers to Jesus at the end of the book, in the last chapter of the biblical book, Hebrews. And in that section, the author is reminding readers to be loving and to be hospitable and to not be taken by the love of money, and don't reduce yourself to using one another sexually. Remember that the sacrifice that God has always wanted is doing good and being generous. And right in the midst of those reminders, the author says, you know what your leaders taught you about Jesus. It's like he's saying, hey, there's some really strange ideas being introduced into the way of Jesus, and where rigid religious types are trying to make it about clean and unclean foods, and ritual purity or impurity, and rituals, and all of those having no discernible benefit to the people insisting upon them. It's like he says, don't listen to that stuff. Just remember that remember who Jesus was before religion tried to get a hold of him, because Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It was an encouragement to stay the course and not let other ideas leak in. But it's remarkable because the ideas that were leaking in weren't new. That stuff that people have been doing since the dawn of time, that is sort of Rather than saying there are new ideas, it's like the author is saying that same old is trying to creep in. And so let's go even older. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Let's not forget that, because people were trying to introduce or reintroduce rules about bodies that are rooted in shame, or reintroduce ideas about blood and death that go back to an understanding of God who wants slaughter in exchange for disappointment. Rules that make fear and terror seem like the only way that you can prove that you're taking the divine seriously, or that you're pious. See, really, Jesus is what seemed like the new novel idea. God became a human being. God was born, the incarnation of the divine, the seen of the unseen, a God of justice who is nonviolent, an almighty who is completely vulnerable from birth to death, who died, a God who can be murdered, but then a God who resurrects. Like death isn't permanent. That seems new. A God that forgives those who betrayed and murdered him, who gave his Spirit to the unprepared and unqualified and the unlearned. All of this really seemed like the novel idea, and yet we learn Jesus is what God is like. Jesus insists in multiple ways, in multiple places, if you've seen me, you've seen God. I am what the divine is like. And the author of Hebrews doubles down on the idea. Don't get tripped up in these self-serving distortions. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and always. God is the same as God has always been. So many generations before Jesus was born, there was a man they called Kohelet. And Kohelet means teacher. And there's a Hebrew Old Testament book called Kohelet, but in English we call it Ecclesiastes. And tradition says that it's the son of David. It's Solomon that writes Ecclesiastes. And so that is Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, the teacher is what that means, is the wisest man alive and in his time. And if you prefer, the wisest man ever. And in the first chapter, the teacher, Solomon, in his wisdom, says this: what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It already has been in the ages before us. This is an ancient way of saying, been there, done that. And perhaps you've gotten to a point in your life, in your faith, in your way of moving through the world, where this is starting to make more sense to you than it used to. Where people get excited about something, and you're not trying to be cynical, but you're like, I don't know why everybody's getting so riled up about this. We've seen this before. Or we've seen a version of this before. You're not trying to be a party pooper. It's just, we've seen this. This doesn't seem novel or new. We've seen this before. We've been here before. It's like watching a scary movie for the 5th time. It's hard to spill your popcorn over the jump scares anymore. It's like, I've seen it. Or I've seen one just like it. Or maybe it's what you're noticing people are getting terrified or furious about all around you. And you're trying to be understanding. You don't want to be dismissive, but and you also want to be involved and show that you're involved. But there's this part of you that's like, it's hard for me to conjure the same emotional reaction to all of this because we've seen this before. We've been here before. Or like the 150th time that somebody refers to this as unprecedented times. And there's part of you that's like, look, I understand this is hard, but is unprecedented the word? Is that the word that we mean? I mean, it's hard, and it's like nothing I'd like to go through again, but is unprecedented really the word? Or people say, how are we ever going to get through this? And in your mind, you're thinking, yeah, it's going to be hard, but we've gotten through everything that got us to this point. Asking the question, how are we ever going to get through this? Or people start accusing others of some conspiratorial plan, some hidden scheme that's going to once again pit good and evil against each other. And there's the memes and all the posts online and different camps, people trying to make up their mind about the validity of the conspiracy. And maybe you're like, yeah, but I sort of remember there being a buzz about Kentucky Fried Chicken changing its name to KFC, so technically it could disguise the fact that their meat wasn't chicken. Haven't we seen this kind of paranoia before? How many of us have heard, this is the most important election in history? Freedom and democracy itself is on the line. It's an important election. But a lot of us are hearing that and going, every 4 years, people say this is the most important election. And maybe philosophically that's true, because how can the one in the past still be as important as the one that's in the present? But every 4 years, all freedom is on the line. The most important election ever. How many of us are hearing people say, these are the last days. The end of the world is right around the corner. I've read that twice in the last 48 hours. 2 different people are saying, this is it. It's just very clear. These are the end times. This is the end of the world. And some of us are like, we've heard that. We've heard that a lot. Do you know, in the year, for one of dozens and dozens of examples, Christians in the year 1000 thought that was going to be the end. And I would have been one of them. The year 1000 feels really biblical. 1,000 years after the birth of Christ, that seems like a real good time for the whole thing to be over. Well, in the year 1001, they were like, okay, so that didn't pan out the way that we were scared it was gonna go. It must be 1,000 years after his death. So then it was 1033 was going to be the end of the world. Spoiler alert, 1034, they were like, maybe it's 1050, on and on and on. Every couple of decades, groups of people say the end of the world is going to be here. In September 1909, there was buzz about Halley's Comet. It was in the fall of 1909. There was a growing sense of worry that Halley's Comet was going to go by and wipe us out. A French astronomer said that there was this cyanogen gas in the tail of Halley's Comet, that as it went by, it was going to, quote, snuff out all life. By the beginning of 1910, it reached hysteria for a lot of people. Guess what? In May, it flew by. It was really pretty. Some of us remember Y2K. And some of us remember friends and family in the fetal position while Dick Clark counted down to the year 2000 because planes were going to drop out of the sky and everything that you plug in was going to either break down or turn into artificial intelligence and take over the world. Everybody was scared. You can go back, if you're too young to remember that, Google it. It's almost hilarious now how many books and lectures were warning us that it's over. Spoiler alert, we made it. And of course the Mayan calendar said that the end of all things and the beginning of a whole other thing would start in 2012. And here we are. What has been is what will be. And what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. And Jesus, who ironically is the central figure of the New Testament, is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and isn't wearing a path in heaven's carpet, pacing the floor, fretting about how things were then, how things are now, or how they're going to be tomorrow. He even said, in this world, you're going to have trouble. As somebody who seemed to know what he was talking about, in this world, you're going to have trouble. Things are going to be awful sometimes. Take heart. I've overcome the world. Same as it ever was. Now, why is this important? Why is this more than some hyper-spiritual shrug of our shoulders? To look at the world and say, you know what, nothing matters, so why try to do anything at all? Why is this more than that? Why is this important? Because it is. And here's why, I think. Because these times call for understanding a lot more, and before, they call for words and actions. These times call for understanding, just like all the times before, and just like all the times that will follow. These times call for understanding. So much stress and anxiety and fear and division and reactivity are caused not just because of what's happening, but because of our lack of understanding about what's happening, and really a lack of a desire to understand. We sort of just make up our minds. Well, I know what's happening, and we stop being students. We start telling people things, having really no idea what we're talking about, because we actually lack understanding and lack a desire to understand. Like Jonathan talked about a couple weeks ago, we are plagued by this thing we do where we would rather be right than get it right. We make ourselves miserable, and we separate ourselves, and we cause ourselves all kinds of stress, and we're afraid by trading understanding or a desire to understand for a made-up and reactive, fearful mind, and an inability to perceive well what's happening, to appreciate nuance, to stay curious to the interconnectedness of all that has come before and all that will follow. When we exchange an appreciation for those kinds of insights and for that kind of wisdom, when we exchange it for instead being reactionary, for judging reflexively, for moving immediately into us and them, for letting upset and condemnation and easy answers be our primary responses to most difficulties in our life, it's a problem for us. It's always been a problem for us as individuals, as friends, as families, as communities, as nations, as a species. That kind of thinking, that level of consciousness has never gotten us anywhere good. But in contrast, remaining curious and remaining aware to what has been, being connected to what is, connected to what will be, that's always been an opportunity for growth and for wisdom. Remaining curious and aware about that which on the surface seems surprising and bad and evil and out of nowhere and hopeless and terrifying and undesirable and alarmingly new. Underneath all that, an awareness to say, yeah, but what's it connected to? Where is it going? What are some better questions to ask? It's always been good for us to do that. Think about it. Who's ever been shocked or upset or offended at Domino 100 falling over? You sort of naturally say, well, the reason it fell over is because of the 99 events that preceded it. You don't have to really even think about it. It's just normal. That happened because all these things happened. Or if we were standing in a river and a bunch of cut logs floated past us, we would sort of naturally assume, well, upstream somewhere, there's some guys with beards and plaid shirts with an axe on their shoulder. This is connected to what preceded it. But as our circumstances complicate, as the layers of human interaction and relationships, as they compound, as there seems to be more at stake to our comfort or our safety or our chosen identity, there seems to be more at stake, and so we forget about dominoes. We forget about logs, and the world then seems like a whole bunch of things jumping out in front of us, disconnected agents of good and evil. We lose our wisdom. We depart from our gentle curiosity and our God-given intelligence, and we give in to upset. We lose ourselves, and something then breaks down, not only within us, but between us, because we've forgotten the wisdom of Kohelet. We've forgotten that the Christ isn't worried or threatened and remains now as he was then. I think this is interesting. Consider this experiment that affects us in one way or another.
Time to get those wheels in motion. So we can see what's happening, Eddie and I need a better vantage point. Ready, steady, and they're off. Eddie, what are we expecting to see here?
Well, what we've got is a very simple mock-up of a single lane and busy motorway. Everyone's going to try and drive at the same speed, but driver behaviour is not perfect. Some people go a little bit faster, some people go a bit slower, and the traffic will start to bunch up.
As Eddie predicted, some of the drivers start to vary their speeds, and the distance between the cars changes. They begin to bunch up, and sure enough, a cluster of vehicles comes to a standstill. A phantom traffic jam has formed. When we speed up the footage, we can see this traffic jam starting to spread backwards around the circle. And once it starts, it just keeps going.
So all it takes really then is a couple of people to brake or something and that sets it all off?
Sure, if there are enough cars on the road, something very minor can get magnified into a traffic jam.
So first, I'd like to point out that those men handled being forced into close talking really well, especially when the cameraman is in the basket with them. I mean, they just stayed really cool about being close talkers on camera. But more importantly than that, do you see how something as frustrating as being in traffic that is costing you time and you can't even figure out what's going wrong and it just feels like everybody's being an idiot and you're not getting what you want and it seems like it's happening to you when you're part of traffic? Do you see how with it, if you look at it from another perspective with curiosity and an openness and awareness, that you can perceive that what is happening is simply a feature of what has happened just before. And that is a feature of what happened just before. That's all connected. And in doing that, you can come to new understandings without fear or anger or really even judgment. And with that understanding, you can have peace. And maybe now you have the true ability to improve things somewhat. Now with this perspective, you can actually improve, in this specific example, traffic. Whereas before, misery, anger, reactivity, all that did was added misery, reactivity, and anger. See, these times call for understanding. And we have to do the work of climbing up into the crane to see it. And there's going to be most things that you're not going to be able to see. Most of life is just a mystery, and we have to get used to that. We don't get answers to why about most things, like a lot of the suffering that we go through. There are things that we're just never going to figure out. But this is in large part what we mean by faith. To trust the one who has the best view, who has the best crane, who has the best seat in the basket looking at our traffic, who despite shifting circumstances is the same yesterday, today, and forever, who doesn't show up every time something bad happens and says, okay, new plan, who doesn't show up every 4 years going, okay, we've got to do a totally different strategy. We trust the one who can see things for what they really are, how they're connected, not just popping up like a haunted house in front of us now, but that it's all connected, that we're connected to each other, and what is happening now is a feature of what came before. We trust the one who can see what's actually happening and says, yep, I have the same strategy. Love, peace, kindness, justice, and joy are still the strategy. I'm not showing up, wringing my hands, saying, we've got to change tactics here. We trust the one who can see all of that and says, yes, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. And my way is the same. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-discipline. But we have to say yes to an invitation to be students and get out of a reactionary space and into the seat in the crane. And every exchange, no matter how small, and every frustration, and then on every big scale as well, such as we're all experiencing together as a nation here in the U.S., and all are doing and interacting, we have to do the work of getting out of reactionary space and saying yes to an invitation to see. There's a lyric to an old song in the book of Psalms, Psalm 145:8, and this phrase actually gets used in several places throughout the Hebrew scriptures and in other psalms. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. Now this is interesting because the words slow to anger sound like there's good news that God gets angry after you do. It takes God a little bit longer to get angry. But in the actual Hebrew that this is translated from, there is no word for slow or to or anger. It literally talks about God's face, so literally talks about God in a metaphor, and the word translated slow to has to do with the length of a bird's wing feathers. And so it says the Lord is gracious and full of compassion and has long wing feathers. And it's a picture of perspective. It's not so much talking about emotion as it is the perspective you have when you can soar and see things not just in their immediate sense, but from the vantage point of the sky. You can see the greater picture. You can see all the dominoes, not just domino 100. You can see upstream and downstream, and everything being connected to everything else. And connected to the virtue of this long-wingedness, having these long feathers, is God's grace and compassion and mercy. That's why those things go together, because God can see things as they actually are. God's long-wingedness is an interesting way of not so much talking about God's emotions, but God's perspective, which is connected to things like patience and compassion. So if you've ever wondered, how is it that God forgives? Maybe not them. Maybe you think, how could God forgive me? It's because God can see the 99 dominoes, not just the one mistake that shallow religion has tried to shame you about. Or if you've ever wondered how we're supposed to love our enemy, how in the world are you supposed to love that person or those people? It's because when you see someone's backstory or a whole group of people and how they came to be and see things the way that they are and the way that they do, it becomes a whole lot less outrageous. It starts to make sense. It's not so easy to call them evil or bad. It starts to really make sense. To love your enemy sometimes means I looked upstream to see how we got here. I took the time in my wisdom and my compassion to understand and not just judge. If you ever wondered how we're supposed to be people of faith when science and medicine are making so many discoveries and there's so many things that make it harder to believe the way that we used to believe, it's because to discover something is to discover what has always been true. We just didn't have the vantage point to be able to see it. We weren't able to see what was already true. That's how we're discovering more and more truth. How in the world could that be a threat to a faith tradition rooted in truth? We're simply getting to see what is connected to what was, and it's going to very much affect what comes next. If you've ever wondered, what is wrong with people these days? And how in the world are we ever going to get back to something normal again, whatever that means? Well, wherever we're headed, it's going to require love and joy and peace and patience, the fruit of the Spirit, the way of Jesus. All of that is still going to be the path. If you're wondering, how is the faith of my childhood going to ever apply to where things are and where they seem to be headed? Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But the same strategy will apply. If you've ever wondered how the peace of God that transcends understanding works, well, I think it's rooted in the idea that God is inviting us to trust that there's nothing new under the sun, and that even now your best path is the way of Jesus, and that God is not shocked, that the Christ is not pacing the floor worried about how things are turning out in your home or in your nation or on this planet. So we're going to cover some interesting ground in this series, but for now, our sincere hope is that we would seek to be people of understanding in these times, because these times call for understanding, just like all the times that preceded this one, and just like all that will follow. It has always been and always will be. And with this understanding, with those long wings of perspective and wisdom, with that comes grace and compassion and great mercy. So may we come to see that the world, people, circumstances, and even ourselves are all connected. Connected now and connected to what has been and connected to what will be. And the way of Jesus, who is the same yesterday, today, and always, isn't worried and isn't surprised and is still inviting us to follow him into all of it.
Thank you for joining us today, and welcome home. If you are in need of assistance during this crisis, please reach out at crosspoint.org/help.